Hey everybody, it's been a while since I've made a video. I decided to do a video today not related to brewing, but related to food allergies. My wife has several food allergies, but the one I'm going to be dealing with today is an allergy to cow's milk. Not a lactose intolerance, but an actual allergy, and only to cow's milk. She can still have sheep's milk and goat's milk, and you can actually substitute those two milks or other non-cow milks in this recipe, but I'm doing this completely milk-free so that people who are lactose intolerant as well maybe can get some benefit out of this video. So what I'm going to be making today is a chocolate ice cream, completely milkless chocolate ice cream from butternut squash. And now, I know you guys are going to think I'm crazy, but this turns out wonderfully good. But you can also, I'm using butternut squash because my father-in-law gifted us with a ton of them, and we're actually growing them too, so I decided to use butternut squash. But you can actually use pumpkin. Obviously there's another homegrown pumpkin, but you can use pumpkin, you can use sweet potato, just about any of the hard-bodied squash or hard-skinned squash. They all turn out really good. Some have more flavor than others, so you're going to get a little more flavor. The nice thing about the butternut squash is you don't get any of the squash flavor, but you do have to put, they can tend to be a little starchy. So for some reason I figured out that, and this is, I know it looks like disgusting mush, but this is actually just overripe bananas that once they start to get overripe, if we don't eat them, I peel them and stick them in a freezer bag and freeze them and use them in banana bread or whatever. But I actually take about the equivalent of 2 bananas, overripe bananas. Underripe bananas don't work as well, but overripe bananas, and put in the ice cream mix before it's frozen, after I've boiled it down, right before I freeze it. And it actually takes some of the starchiness away. I'm not sure why. I just know that I was playing around with it and I was going to make a chocolate banana ice cream, and it turned out the best ice cream that I had made out of butternut squash. So that's what I'm using. But I'm going to get into the recipe and all that in just a few minutes. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and get started. Now, when you're cutting up these squash, you really want a sharp knife. Now, I haven't sharpened this in a while. It's probably going to be a bit dull, so I'm going to start, and if it is too dull, I'm going to stop and then sharpen it, and then we'll come back to it. So anyway, so the knife was a little bit dull, so I went and resharpened it. Turned out nicely. I can do a video on knife sharpening if you like. I do all my knives by hand. I've been a carpenter for a long time, so I'm used to sharpening all my own blades and everything. But just to give you an idea of how I like to cut these squash to make it a little bit easier, I basically I don't even cut it in half or whatever, or seed it. I just go through and make rings, short rings. And like I said, you want to be real careful. These knives are sharp. They will cut you. Cut you quickly and without you knowing. So yeah, I just cut it in rings, and I kind of give it a good thing. Here we go. De-seed real quick. I think this portion of the video will just be edited out and, quick bits, but taking the seeds out. You can save the seeds, plant them in your garden, but we have a ton already, so I'm just putting them in compost. And definitely make as big a mess as you can, because that's always the fun part, is making messes. And since these seeds are growing in compost, I'll probably end up getting several volunteer butternut squash plants, but that's fine. That's always a nice surprise. Save them and give them to somebody. Somebody that has a garden. If you don't garden yourself, save the seeds and put them on a paper towel, let them dry. You don't even have to take them off the paper towel. You can just pull bits of that paper towel off a seed, put them in the ground, and they should grow. So anyway, okay, that part's done here. Because you now have a round, and I don't know, let's see if I can do this where the camera can see it. So you have a round, and what you end up doing is just slicing right down the side, and it always works best with a sharp knife, and you can get those little edges. I found this is the easiest way. A peeler, like potato peeler, carrot peeler, they don't work on these hard flesh squash. So get all the way around, get this bit of rind off this. Actually, I don't know that it really affects the flavor so much, but I just like to remove it. It can have a tendency to be a little woody or fibrous, so you end up getting little fibers in your ice cream. Anyway, okay, so that's good. And really all I'm doing is cutting these guys up into chunks and pieces that cook somewhat quick. And I'm not a trained chef. I can't tell you how to properly cut, but all I know is that I keep my fingers away from the blade any way I can. Because my whole purpose when I was a carpenter, I'm sort of semi-retired, I'm in school. When I was a full-time carpenter, my whole gosh, completely lost my train of thought. My goal was to retire with all of my fingers, and I've managed to do that so far, working with all the tools. So I'm not going to have my fingers cut off by a kitchen knife. So like I said, be very careful when you're cutting. Look at that, about cut off a fingernail. Anyway, so 1-inch pieces. You can cut them smaller, cut them larger. It's just going to depend on how long you feel like waiting for everything to cook. But anyway, here's that section of video. So it's all cut up, and I wind up with about, it says here on the scale, about 3 pounds and 8 ounces of butternut squash. That's skinned, de-seeded, everything. I'm not one to really follow recipes to the letter. I will, if I'm making something for the first time, I'll do what the recipe says, or as close as I can manage. But usually, after I do it that first time, I've kind of figured out what I like and don't like about it, and then I change it to my own taste. So this recipe really is to my taste. If you feel like changing it, change it up. If you like more chocolate, if you like more sugar, my wife likes things insanely sweet, and I am not a huge sweet man. So I try to get some middle ground here because I like this ice cream too. It's not just for my wife. Anyway, so what I'm going to do now is take it over to the pot, and start cooking. And we will get into measured amounts of cinnamon, cocoa powder, honey, and sugar, which is basically all there is to this recipe, in either this part or another part.